Sometimes we all need encouragement. Life has a way, in its seasonality, of sapping our perspective away, of obscuring the perspective we need to take in our stride. The way that our fortunes change in terms of the energy we have, in terms of the path we see visible or available before us. And it can rob meaning from the way we've shaped our lives and paint everything in a dark palette. And when that happens, even wisdom or advice from someone else comes as a kind of affront. It pains us and lands as kind of emotionally insensitive or emotionlessly clinical in some way. And sometimes there's no easy way out for that. And we've already decided in our lives that we are not going to make ourselves amenable to rescue or to easy answers, realizing how much of our previous unhappiness and dissatisfaction came from exactly that. And when we find ourselves in this place, especially as adults, we don't really have the comfort of lying in the lap of a parent or of the sanctuary we find in the arms sometimes of a big brother or a big sister, or that one kind of friend that can just lift their arm in a way that lifts a cloak between us and the rest of the world, a place of shelter, a place of refuge almost. And this message, this idea that I'm exploring here now with you is aimed at touching that part of us that shrinks away from the world because we're so unwilling to suffer a clumsy touch. And yet we are so hungry for touch, and specifically the kind of touch that knows how to do it gently. We long for an intuition and a form of love and leadership which can eclipse all of the sadness and the sorrow that we feel, all the sense of grief that settles on us. In these moments, we feel most alone and most isolated from the rest of the world. And yet, to know that this is a feeling that visits all of us. This is a way we all come by, actually. And just to know that is to realize that in this we are actually not alone at all. We all sorrow with kindred sorrows. We all lament in a very similar way, a sameness of our loss of dreams, our loss of innocence. Life can be extremely unforgiving sometimes. And with an irony, exactly in that moment when we lack the perspective and the resilience inside of ourselves is when we need it the most and when we can find it nowhere else in the world. And our sorrow and our grief is something we never get taught how to face the facing of. Not well in ourselves and much less in another. We don't know how to sit with that. We don't know how to witness it. We have an intuition that the pitfall or the risk is to slide into a kind of victim stance, which we know is wrong because it won't really serve us. But there is something in between the immaturity of a kind of pretense towards stoic indifference and the immaturity of a victim stance. There's somewhere in between that we're looking for, which is neither indifferent nor a wallowing in self-pity. And the difference, the secret really, is self-permission. Self-permission to simply face what we're feeling and feel it. And hold it like a cradling. Face it without looking away and acknowledge the depth of it and the sadness, the truth of that sadness, and the poignancy of that sadness. It's not something we can simply shrug off. It's not something which clumsy offers of encouragement and perspective actually do us any good. They actually do us more harm in drawing uncomfortable attention to the fact that we are in the manner of the carrying of our own burden, utterly and unbearably alone. And then there's this invitation, easily missed invitation, to grace, to sit in smallness within the largeness of our life. The invitation to grace is to sit in a small way in the largeness of our own life. And just be held in that, even as we do the holding. And the trick, of course, is to not look away, not look for answers, not pick through the bones of story, trying to make sense of things. Just simply sit and feel. Just be present with that sorrow in a graceful way. To wish it to be over is a wasted effort. It's belaying the inevitable. To ferret through all of the plot drama of our life to try and determine the solution is a failure of effort. The only answer is grace. Just sitting with it, just holding it, just allowing how we feel, with no explanation, no justification, no wish that it be anything other. Because it's a kind of processing that needs to happen. And the skillful way of processing that is sitting with it and not looking away. Like everything else in our life, this has a seasonality. It does pass. But if we wanted to pass in the most natural way, the most wholesome way, where we feel a sense of requitedness or a sense of release and renewal at the end of it, the only way is to stop looking at the clock. Nothing in your life right now is more important than just sitting and holding your own stuff. Nothing. No work meeting, no external obligation. Aside from our children when they're very young, aside from that, nothing in our life is more important than this. Nothing. And this is the way we eventually get to be held, the way we wanted to be held all along, in that lived truth of presence that says nothing in this world is more important than your feelings right now. There's no tight holding on. There's no urgency. There's just a real patience. That is the meaning of grace. And that is the lap of the mother that we've all been longing to come to rest in all this time. And our wounds are great. The souls alive in the world at the moment have an enormous amount of generational trauma and psychological unwellness to process. We're suffering from mental health we don't even understand, from mental health pressures we cannot maintain or control. And beyond all of that, we're struggling with a neglect to our spiritual health, something we didn't even know was important. And we don't have maps to these ways of moving through the world. We don't have textbooks. A lot of the answers that are coming to us from people who are claiming to be guides and coaches and teachers and healers, they also only know so much. And sometimes we can take even the best advice kind of in the wrong way and think that everything is a one and done healing, or something that requires more effort, or a stoic letting go, equanimity of. And the kind of wounds that we're dealing with are not just ours, they're inherited by past generations. And when the wound is great, we have to face the processing of it many times in many different seasons of our life. And the only skillful way to do that is the complete surrender of facing it and holding it whilst being held in it completely. It's It's not something we can time box in a short way. And yet, paradoxically, it is something we time box, because we give ourselves a day to sit in that deeply and even go to bed with no glimmer of hope. Just fall asleep in the gentle holding of that pain and that sorrow. Nothing more. Secretly, this is how you've wanted to be held all along. And we just didn't realize that we could do it for ourselves. In fact, sometimes the most skillful way of doing it is to do it for ourselves. No one else is coming. You came, and you're enough. You do actually got this. I speak from experience. This works. And if you sit and hold and face you and your emotional needs and your sorrows properly, that's what our sorrows are. It's the failure of the world and of life and our loved ones to love us the way we needed to be loved. If we can hold that and face that properly in a day, the next morning you wake up, the sun is brighter in the sky. The day seems lighter. And your cup doesn't seem so bitter or so empty. Give it a try.